All right, Peter. So today I wanted to talk about Usyk Chisora, the fight that has now been made for October 31st. Eddie Hearn seemed very keen to get this over the line in the light of sort of more strict COVID restrictions. There was talk about this fight happening as soon as crowds came back, which is now obviously not going to happen for the foreseeable. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we kind of heard that they were trying to make the fight and that Usyk was really pushing for the fight. And they decided to do it behind closed doors. The venue hasn't been disclosed yet, but it's going to be somewhere in London, I hear. So we'll hear about that shortly. But this fight was supposed to happen in March of this year and has been put back and put back and put back due to the COVID restrictions. And here we are now. It's going to be a behind closed door event. So a very interesting fight. Very fascinating fight. And just to run down a bit, how we got here. Obviously, Usyk is 33 years old. He's 17-0. The interesting thing about Usyk, which I'll come on to a bit more in detail later, is he's been quite inactive for Usyk in particular. As we've discussed before, Peter, 311 amateur fights. So a stellar amateur career, culminating in Olympic gold medals, world championships, turning pro in 2013, and then racing to win a world cruiserweight title in record time in his only 8th fight, and then unifying the cruiserweight title in, I believe, only his 12th fight. Then he fought Tony Bellew, cemented his position at cruiserweight and moved up to the heavyweights. Now, he fought Bellew in 2018, and all he's done since then is one match against Chaz Witherspoon at heavyweight when he didn't look massively impressive. So I would say Usyk's career, going by the pace and talent of Usyk, has definitely stalled. Chisora, we know now, really as the old warhorse. Now, in this fight, Usyk is seen as the guy that's coming up, and Chisora is seen as kind of almost the lion in winter, who's kind of there for the taking by the young gun. But Chisora's only 36. He's only 3 years older than Usyk, which people forget. He did turn pro back in 2007, and he's obviously been very active. He's just kind of, we know where Chisora stumbled. He's almost found a level as a gatekeeper heavyweight, with guys like Hay, he wouldn't really be looked on as somebody who could fight, the Joshua's, Furies of this world. Although he has fought Fury twice. The first fight for the British title was fairly close. The second fight was a bit of a shutout, and Fury does so well in rematches. And he, since his last loss in 2018 to Dylan White, he's racked up a 3-fight winning streak against decent opposition. And he hasn't fought now for a year since 2019, obviously because of COVID restrictions. So that's the intriguing thing in this fight. And the thing about Chisora is he always brings it. He always comes to fight. You know what you're going to get: a tough, strong guy who will bring it to you. And that's why, the fans love him, despite the fact that, his record now, he has 32 wins and 9 losses. But, he's still there as somebody that the fans love to watch, and he always brings it, and he's often quite controversial. So coming into this fight, I think Usyk is expected to win. Usyk is taking this fight, I'm presuming, with a big pay cut. He's pressed hard for it because he wants to make himself relevant. He is the WBO mandatory at heavyweight because he was the undisputed cruiserweight champion. So he's mandatory for Anthony Joshua. So in theory, the prize for Chisora is to win and become WBO mandatory himself and get a knock at Chisora. But Joshua has already said he wouldn't take that fight. He'd probably vacate the WBO because Chisora wouldn't sell. Chisora against Joshua wouldn't sell. Usyk against Joshua may sell if Usyk overcomes this hurdle. Now, going into the fight, what's the real dangers? How's it going to play out? Usyk has to win. That's the interesting thing, and Usyk has to win impressively. He has to show, one thing, that he can take a heavyweight shot, and Chisora's a great guy to deliver that because Chisora will come looking for him. Against Chaz Witherspoon, he didn't look that impressive. Is he punching with heavyweight power, or is he still punching with cruiserweight power? Can he take, a fully fledged cruiserweight like Dereck's, heavy shots? All right, he's not a massive puncher, but he is quite a big puncher. He does knock people out, So, these are the questions that need to be answered, and Usyk needs to look impressive. I expect Usyk to come into this fight being a bit cautious. I expect him to use that fleet-footed movement. I expect him to box around and, really try and work Chisora out, see if he can take his power, see if he can hurt him, and then I think maybe move in for the kill if that works later on in the fight. But Chisora is going to come in, and Chisora's strategy is definitely going to be to mess Usyk around. He will go straight for him, looking to land some big fights. And, as we've said, Usyk has these skills from that amazing, those amazing achievements he's had. And Chisora's going to look to negate those skills by being on top of him, by making the fight ugly, by pulling him around, by closing down his space. by mauling him, by being the bigger, heavier man. Although they are pretty much the same height, Chisora is seen as the bigger man. So that's going to be his tactics. So he's going to be there to be hit, but he's going to hit Usyk. And, how is Usyk going to react to that? That's what we want to see. So there's a lot here for Chisora. It's a good fight for Chisora, because he gets to sort of rain on Usyk's parade potentially and become the WBO mandatory to Joshua, which if Joshua did vacate, he could fight someone else for the WBO mandatory. So, there's a lot to win for Chisora here. And Usyk really, if he loses this one, he'll become irrelevant in the heavyweight division. So he needs to win, and he needs to win impressively, because after the Chaz Witherspoon thing, questions are being asked if he is as special as he first looked. So that's the interesting thing. How will the behind closed doors affect? I think it might affect Chisora a bit more, funnily enough, because Chisora always brings a big crowd, especially in London. They're very passionate, they're very vociferous. Usyk is used to fighting all over the world in all sorts of different environments. So I think Usyk will probably cope better with the behind closed door situation. And Chisora, that may take a little bit away from his game. But again, as I've said before, you know what you're going to get with Dereck. You know what he's going to bring. You know he's going to come to go to war. So I think it makes for a very exciting fight. I would say, in my opinion, it's going to play out that Usyk is either going to score a late stoppage or a points win. So despite all his stellar achievements at cruiserweight, the question that Oleksandr Usyk wants to answer is he relevant at heavyweight? And this is the thing that when he came on the scene, it was going to be seen with all these stellar achievements, he's going to storm into the heavyweights. His progression has stalled, and he needs to be relevant. I mean, Fury, what he wants is to break into the top three. He wants to break into those three kings and fight, Joshua Wilder, Fury. Fury has already said he doesn't see Usyk as relevant at all. He said, in typical Fury fashion, he could beat him with one hand tied behind his back, and it didn't matter which hand you tied behind his back, he would still beat him. Sees him as a little guy who's irrelevant. So, this is why it's even more important for Usyk, whose, like I said, career has stalled. So I keep repeating that, but he needs to make a statement. He needs to make himself relevant. He needs to say, almost to answer these questions, he needs to come out of this fight saying, I punch with heavyweight power and I can take the shots of a fully fledged heavyweight. And therefore I need a shot, at my WBO mandatory Joshua or even Fury or anybody like that to break into the big scene and, to sort of cement his status as a legitimate heavyweight contender. So Chisora is a great fight for that. He could achieve those things with this fight, but he needs to look impressive. Even if he wins on points with those skills, people will say, well, you don't punch with authority. You can't stop Chisora. And what's going to happen when Chisora hits him and does come looking for him? If he is shaken, people will say, well, when you get in with the real big hitters, it's going to be game over. So, Usyk can win and not win, if you see what I mean. He's got to win and look very impressive. So that's the task in front of him. And, Chisora will bring his A game, bring his war. There's a lot to win for him here. So the pressure is more on Usyk. So, we're going to see how it plays out, but it is going to be a great fight. I think it's going to be a fascinating fight. It's the real sort of, silky skills, and let's see if Usyk is the real deal at heavyweight against what we know we're going to get, which is an exciting fight, the war machine that is Dereck Chisora. So really looking forward to this one, Peter. It's going to be a great fight.